So what I wanted to do for this hackathon was to create a tile engine. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to create a landscape that I procedurally generate using Berlin noise, which will be infinitely large. And I want to render that by dividing it into smaller chunks called tiles. And I will only render those tiles that are close to the camera. And what should happen is that as I walk along the landscape, I will take those tiles that ended up behind the camera and put them in front. And that way I can walk on forever, basically, in the landscape. So what I have created is something called a tile view, not a tile engine, but a tile view, since it reminded me somewhat of a table view, actually. And the tile view, you can set the size of the tiles, like here. I want tiles that are 100 by 100. And in this case, I also want to have 20 tiles along X and 20 tiles along Z, and only one along the Y-axis. So it's a flat landscape. And then I can just assign a delegate that should be instantiated for each and every tile. And in this case, it's a model. It can be any kind of quick 3D node. It's a cube. And I also, just to show how this works, I want to colorize the tiles. So what I want to do is that when applications start, I will check which tile is this. And if the tile has an X and a C coordinate to 0, I will color it red, otherwise white. So this tile view has attached properties, tile view tile, so we can always check that if you want to do something special for each tile. So let's start this little, this is how it looks. You can see the red tiles at startup, and now you can see what's going on. As we move, the red stripes will wrap around to the other side. So I'm just recycling the same tiles over and over. And what struck me while I was working on this is that half of the tiles are never going to be visible. They are behind the camera. So I did a little optimal. If we now do this. So what I want to do is I want to tile view which direction I'm looking. And I'm doing that by assigning the camera's forward vector to my direction. The problem is that the forward vector doesn't emit when it changes, so I need to go through this extra piece of code here and listen for rotation instead, and then update direction. Anyway, if I do that, then you can see that only the tiles that are in front of the camera will now be shown, and the other ones will be hidden. So the project, and the next part was to use this to create a little terrain based on Berlin noise. So this is almost the same example, except now that the delegate will be a model that has a special explicit geometry set using the new quick 3D geometry, in this case called the land tile. And I can configure the land tile a little bit, but important, I need to also tell it where in the world this tile is going to be. And based on that, I will generate Berlin noise landscape pieces that fits together like a jigsaw. So, okay, let's start this one up. So here we go. It looks okay-ish. It's very basic right now. I didn't have time to add any more details into this. It's basically a Berlin noise landscape with 3 octaves, for those that are familiar with that. And you can basically now just, go on and on and on forever. There is basically no ending to this landscape. And while I was puzzling with this example, I thought, okay, why just stick with landscape in 2 dimensions? I mean, the tile engine can just as easily go into 3 dimension, the Z dimension as well. So I thought, okay, I'll get to the 3rd example called stars. And what I want to do was to actually use this new instancing technology that is new now in cubes. So in this case, I will create rather large tiles in my tile view, but not so many of them, just 4 by 4 by 4 in this case. And then I could have this little star, which is basically just a little cube with some fancy shaders. and some rotation. And the positioning will then use this new instancing property, which uses this random instancing, which will basically fill up the whole tile, which is now a cube more than a tile, the whole tile with small stars. Yeah, so let's look at that. Stars there, right. So here we go. So now you have like tiles in all 3 dimensions that will go on forever. So here you can watch the famous stars, you know, flying by. So yeah, looks kind of good. What I kind of liked the most with this little project was the view, which I now created as a little plugin, Camel plugin, small API. You can assign it to delegate, so that can be whatever you want to, and tile count and tile size, which makes it very versatile. You can use it for many different things. So thank you. That was my contribution.